Hello, how's it going? Thank you so much for tuning in to Born Optimistic once again. I'm looking forward to revisiting the past on Saturday, June 17th, because the wedding present, who were the soundtrack to my early teenage years, are coming to Dublin to play their seminal album, George Best, in full. And what an album it was. In honour of their return, I feel like a very lucky lad because I got to speak to David Gedge, my early teenage idol. So, David Gedge, how the hell are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, very well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you're there. You're in sunny Los Angeles. I assume it's sunny.
It's always sunny here, I think. Yeah.
So when you wrote the single California, did you have spending more time in Los Angeles in mind, or did you realize that it was your destiny?
I think it was kind of more of a sort of metaphorical, concept in terms of that song. It was kind of, let's go to some fabulous place where our dreams will come true, kind of thing. And obviously, in our culture, California is seen as that kind of destination, with the sunshine and the gold rush, and then the movie industry and all that kind of stuff. So it just seemed like an exciting kind of place. But I have been here quite a lot actually over the last few years. I kind of lived off and on over certain periods. So it's I do enjoy coming over here.
And the sunshine doesn't hurt.
Yeah, you got to be careful with the old sun protection.
So tell me, David, your voice actually sounds full of joy, but would you describe yourself as an optimist, a pessimist? Where do you feel you fit on the spectrum of optimism?
Well, it's an interesting question because I'm obviously here in the land of where everybody's optimistic, So I think anybody from the UK or Ireland over here is straight away deemed as being a pessimist because we're not overjoyed by the you know the slightest thing. It's kind of everybody's crazy over here. So I don't know. I'm probably just average, really, to be honest with you. I think I'm fairly optimistic, but then again, I always look at things with a slightly cynical view, as most people do. I think.
So has your attitude changed over the years? I mean, I'm not trying to analyze you necessarily, but you seem, there sounds like more levity in your voice than, let's say, there might have been 30 years ago.
No, I wouldn't say. I feel pretty much the same, to be honest. I think the writing's probably changed over the years, but that's a natural thing as you A, grow older, and B, grow as an artist. You kind of you develop your style, I suppose. So I don't know. I don't feel particularly different.
Because the amazing thing, so obviously we're speaking on the occasion of George Best being 30 years old, the album, obviously not the deceased Irish footballer, and the fact you're coming to Dublin to play it live in full very, very soon. And I was listening to the album a lot in the last week, and it was really weird. I was transported back to that 14-year-old me, and the record's so visceral. It's mad, and I guess you must meet people all the time and hear from people all the time that it means so many things to. But I'm just really curious about where you were coming from when you wrote it, because for anxious teenagers in regional towns, it really felt like you were speaking to us, and your pain was just a couple of years ahead of ours.
Well, yeah, it's a very personal LP. I think of the albums I've made over the years, I think there are three where that are very personal to me, to the point where it's kind of like reading a diary. And George Best was the first of those, obviously. And so, it is like an odd thing for me as well to go back to it, to be honest. I mean, because we did some concerts 10 years ago, when it was the 20th anniversary, there was a label in England who planned to do like like a 20th anniversary re-release of the album, and they said, "Oh, you should consider doing some performances of George Best around this." And I said, "No, I don't think we'll be doing that." Because at the time I felt, I've got my new songs and I've got my new projects, and I'm moving on. I don't want to dwell in nostalgia. But I came away from that meeting, and I spoke to a few like friends and people in the band and fans and stuff, and everybody, to a single person said, "Oh, you've got to play Josh Best live. It'd be amazing. I'd love to." Oh, because obviously when it comes out, you don't play the whole album. You just play a selection of songs from it. So people really wanted us to do it, and I kind of begrudgingly said, "Okay, yeah, let's have a go." And to my surprise, I actually found that I got really into it, and it was kind of like going back and sort of peeking into my life 20 years ago, and in this case 30 years ago, and kind of reliving some of those emotions. And it's almost like a different person in some ways, but at the same time, it's obviously me, and I wrote those, and I very clearly remember all the stories and the kind of events that talked about.
What age, like what period of life is George Best about? I mean, can you set the scene?
Well, basically, it's a breakup record. It's kind of, I wrote it when I was in my mid-20s, but it kind of deals with me and my first girlfriend, I suppose, from the age of, I don't know, 17 or 18. And we went out for a few years, and then she left me for another person. And when you're that age, and you kind of think, I'm going to be, I've already found the love of my life. I'm going to be with this person forever. And then she dumps you. It's obviously quite, a sort of disastrous moment in your life, and that kind of inspired me to write a lot of those songs. And I think that's why it appeals to people, because a lot of people have shared that heartbreak, whether you're male or female, and it's different degrees of that relationship. But it's kind of, I suppose it's the story of the end of that first love, really.
Yeah, I remember that my first serious long-term girlfriend, and that feeling of, yeah, this is it for life, it's never going to end. You never think about a reality beyond that relationship.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes it more poignant in a way.
Wow, and I mean, the first line of the record, "Why do you catch my eye, then turn away?" It's just like devastating.
Well, that's what I've always done. I've always tried to, so I've never hidden behind kind of metaphor. I've never been particularly a fan of using kind of poetic imagery and stuff. So it's kind of direct stuff. It's the way people talk to each other. What they say, how they say it, why they say it, and at the same time, there's a lot of kind of heartbreak in there, but there's also some humour as well, I think. And it's often, so people find themselves in quite comical situations as a result of these terrible situations. It's all about jealousy, really. It's about lust and jealousy and betrayal and that kind of stuff, really.
Why can't she be with me? What does she see in that plonker?
Exactly.
but and I guess back to I was 14, living in Ballinasloe. There was 4 good friends: Ray Hardyman, Tommy Keown, Colm Lyons, myself. We listened to that album obsessively, and you weren't like Steve McQueen. You didn't set yourself up as somebody who had all the answers and was shitting ice cubes and Mr. Cool. You very much felt like you were someone that we could relate to. Someone who felt kind of awkward and didn't feel like you had all the answers.
Oh, totally. And I think weirdly, once I'd established reputation, I suppose, for this person who was writing in depth about relationships in a way that people could understand them. I used to get a lot of letters from people, and they would say, I'm going through this situation with this person, and I wonder if you could give me any advice. And my kind of stock answer was, if you listen to the lyrics and see what I'm writing about, it's about not having the answer in a way. It's about sort of sharing that kind of struggle, and it's kind of what can I do? I don't know. What can I do? It's so yeah, certainly I wasn't, an expert by any means. I was just, I kind of, see my role, now even the same as then, which is as kind of an observer, really, of these various complex relationships, and the only difference between me and anybody else is that I kind of write it all down and create these little songs from it, I suppose.
I'm very intrigued as to how David Gedge ever even got a girlfriend in the first place, and younger David Gedge. I mean, even as a tiny tot, like you were in the enemy all the time when the records came out, but I've never really know anything about your life prior to that. I don't even know where you're from or what it was like where you grew up or what formed you.
Well, it's funny you should ask that, actually, because I'm actually in the process of writing my autobiography, but it's in comic book form, and we've released a few. Yeah, we released a few of the last couple of years. It's called Tales from the Wedding Present. So all those answers are in there. But I mean, feel free to ask me some specific ones if you like.
Well, tell me about the first installment of the comic. Where do you start the comic?
Well, it's not actually in chronological order. The earliest story we've done so far was actually my parents' meeting, which is at Butlins holiday camp in Skegness on the east coast of England there. And then, sort of between then and now, we've dipped into the sort of various, kind of episodes in my life and in the group and growing up and stuff. And we've, just taken those stories. I think if we ever do like a proper collection or a compilation of the stories, that will be in chronological order at some point in the future. But at the moment, we're just kind of writing them as I think about them, really. And there's so many, people, it's just because the band's been going for 30 odd years, and obviously I had a life for 25 years before that or something. So there's a lot of stuff to write about, really, and I really enjoy doing it.
Well, when did music come into your life? Like, when did the notion of that being your path? Like, what was your earliest foray into all that? I mean, because it's a big leap to make. So, where were the seeds of that sown?
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think it was ever a leap for me because it was always there. I grew up, listening to pop radio and playing my parents' record collection. There's photographs of me age about 4, I think. The record player, pretending to be a DJ. So I've always been immersed in it, and I've always been obsessed and fascinated with it, with pop culture in general, really, but also specifically pop music. And it sounds a bit weird, I think, to people now because how could I know this? But I always felt like I was going to do it. I always felt that at some point I would either be in a band or a DJ or something. I would be involved with music. I was very focused on it and very driven. And I went to university in the meantime and did a degree in mathematics. But it was always kind of, I did it as a backup, if you like, because just in case my fantastic career didn't pan out the way I was planning it. But luckily, it did. So, yeah, some music's been there from as long as I can physically remember, and it's I'm not exaggerating when I say that, really.
Wow! So I assume then your parents and everyone around you was really supportive that this what you wanted to do.
Absolutely the opposite, in fact. Really, they were totally non-supportive. I mean, they enjoyed music as much as I did, and to the point. I mean, I suppose the big problem was after university, because until that point, I'd been a good boy. I'd not got into trouble. I went to I passed the exams, went to university, got the degree, and then I said, okay, I'm now going to focus on my career as a musician, if you like. I didn't say it in those terms, but what I kind of said was I'm going to try and sort of make a success out of being in a group. And so I went from this kind of brainy kid at school who got the degree to going on the dole for 2-3 years, and as far as they were concerned, completely wasting all that kind of time, effort, and money that they put into and I put into my education. and I was throwing it all away. And as far as they can see, I was going to be on the dole for the rest of my life, really. So, it's kind of understandable that they weren't particularly supportive. I stopped going home because we just used to go home. We just used to argue all the time if ever I went back there. So, in the end, I stopped going home for a while, and just but then the group came good, if you like, and I'm sure. I'm not totally sure they ever reconcile to the idea of it. Really, I think even now they probably still wish I'd pack it in and get a proper job, even at my age. But
and what were the expectations? I mean, what did your parents do? What did your auntie and uncles do? What was surrounding you? Like, what was the career path that was expected for you?
well, that was the kind of the problem, I think, in a way, because I was the first person from our family really to go to university. Everybody else, I suppose they worked in service industry type jobs. And, my dad was a butcher, and then he drove buses and things like that. And my mum was a receptionist, and then a doctor's surgery. So it was all kind of they saw me as the star really. Who's going to go on and get a degree, and then I don't know, be an accountant or run a bank or something that sounded really amazing to them. And when I kind of started off on that path, they were very excited. And then when I said, actually, I might not be going down that particular road, I think they were very disappointed. So, yeah, they were kind of counting on me to do better, really.
And was the idea of following your dreams or doing something that would fulfill you as an individual, they were kind of fanciful concepts.
Oh, totally, yeah. And I mean, they were to me to a certain extent because I didn't really know what I was doing, and I had no idea or concept of if it could be successful in any way. But for them especially, that they were even further away from it than me. So as far as they were concerned, I was just being an idiot, really.
and just to go back to your teenage years or your preteen, I mean, like for a young lad growing up, I think, I mean, looking back at my youth, that whole terrifying area of relationships and getting to grips with that, which is kind of pretty much the heyday of that is when the wedding present came into my life. So I'm very curious as to what you were like when you were like 13 or 14 and how you found those years.
I think I struggled at that time, like a lot of people, really. I wasn't particularly outgoing. I was pretty shy. I guess I was quite geeky, so I was more kind of in the bedroom, kind of making up fictional countries rather than sort of being outside playing football with the rest of the boys or whatever. I wasn't particularly outgoing, really, in general. So, yeah, kind of, it was one of those like imagining type situations of what it could be like, really, if had I been more successful in that kind of field. But yeah, no, I just wasn't really cut out for it. Which is why the first relationship was very important to me because this person who I started going out with when I think I was probably 18, can't remember. I felt like I was punching way above my weight, really, and I felt very fortunate, and that's why I felt like it was going to be the love affair that would last for the rest of my life, really, because I felt I was totally in love, and the fact that she actually wanted to be with me was quite remarkable for me, really. So yeah, it was a big moment.
And was she your first girlfriend?
Yeah, kind of first proper girlfriend, really. Yeah, and yeah, because I suppose I didn't really have girlfriends before her because like I say, I was too shy. I was one of those people who went to these parties and just stood leaning against the wall, waiting to go home, really. So yeah.
There's a lot of misery attached to those moments when you're growing up, though, of feeling excluded and not feeling that you've got it going on like everyone else does.
Totally, yeah, certainly, and I think that was probably the impetus for the me writing it all down and making a record from it.
And what advice would you give to that teenage you?
I think so. One of the main things about sort of people that age is kind of they sort of feel like they've got so much to lose when they haven't really. You think you look terrible. You think you're stupid and you can't. And there's a lack of confidence, isn't there? I think which sort of people have, which is sort of misplaced, really. I think it's better these days. I think kids are actually encouraged to be a bit more outgoing and sort of not care what they look like, and sort of be true to themselves and everything. So I think in the kind of 30 or 40 years since I was a kid, it's got a bit easier. Well, hopefully, anyway. There's still the same issues, I suppose, and there's still the bullies and the body shaming and all that stuff. But hopefully, it's not quite as isolating as it was.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out at the moment. My eldest son is 8, nearly 9, and I keep saying to him, and I'm only half joking, I keep saying to him, don't bother with relationships till you're about 25. They're all going to be crap before then. Your energy.
Yeah, that's not the worst bit of advice I've ever heard. Yeah. Where were you when I needed you?
But at the same time, I'm kind of wondering, do you need all those crap relationships to get better at it, or can you go straight to a good one?
No, you're probably right. It's all character building, isn't it? It's probably all I'm sure that experience is very useful.
Because sometimes I just think of what I went through, and I'm going, I kind of almost feel the pain of my own son before it's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
And it's how can I help him? But at the same time, the thing I know about experience and lessons, there's no replacement for doing something yourself and going through it yourself. You can't do it for someone else.
No, it's true about many things, that isn't it? And also, time's a great healer. And some of the things that I, when I was, 20 or whatever, some of those terrible things, I look back at them now and think, actually, it wasn't that bad, really. Okay, you had a bit of a problem here, and then this happened. In terms of life's great, the ups and downs, and especially the stuff that's felt by other people in far worse situations than me, it wasn't that bad, really. Okay, your girlfriend chucked you, whatever. Get over it, kind of thing.
Yeah. And how do you feel about getting older then? On the total flip side of that, how are you with that? How does it feel? How do you enjoy it? Or do you like it? Do you fight it? How do you feel about it?
It's an interesting thing. I actually, because I turned 50 a couple of years ago, and I was interviewed by someone who was writing a book about this kind of theory where once you kind of reach 50, so people sort of tend to feel happier because they give up certain, so you're not going to get the young girlfriend anymore. You're not going to, your career's probably peaked. Your mortgage is paid off, so there's no fun. There's a lot of kind of sort of indicators which sort of generally mean that the people kind of are happier sort of post 50, and I was kind of looking forward to it because I thought, great, that'd be a good thing to do. I haven't really noticed that. I don't think. I think my personality's probably changed, but also I'm so immersed in this kind of youth culture career, really, that it's the age really doesn't come into it to a certain extent. I'm still doing the same thing now as I was 35 years ago, really, and I don't feel like I've changed that much, really. As I said before, I've probably got more experience at writing and being, what I am and what I do. But the actual person within doesn't feel that different, really.
But it's an option, I suppose, to have a permanent adolescence if you want it, or a version of that.
And I think that's probably part of the problem for people in my job, really, because yes, it is kind of like an extended childhood, really.
But at the same time, I think aging now is so much different than it was for our parents anyway. because you don't have to stop doing X, Y, and Z at a certain point if you don't want to. It's your own choice.
That's true. It's very. I mean, I even see that with sort of rock music audiences. I remember when I was a kid and started going to concerts. It was just people my age, really. There was no kind of parents there. But nowadays, I see all age groups come to concerts, and there's no shame anymore about liking. Well, if you think about it, the people who like punk rock in the '70s, they're probably in their 60s now, and if they still like that music, why? There's no reason why they shouldn't like go and see the Damned or the Sex Pistols or whatever. It's yeah. So I see what you're saying. It's kind of there's no kind of. I think there was this kind of feeling in the old days, wasn't there? Once you reached middle age, that was it. Really, you had your kids, and you didn't do any. You weren't allowed to participate in pop music and comics and stuff like that anymore. Whereas I think now there's a lot more, especially in America. Actually, I think it's a lot more kind of not frowned upon.
Like I'm 44, going on 45 in a few weeks, and like listening to George Best in particular, like it was like being transported back to those sitting rooms of Ballinasloe, and I don't feel like a different person. So much has happened since. I mean, one of those good friends I used to listen to the record with has unfortunately passed away. I mean, that's one thing that's changed. But it's kind of mad. It's just there's something visceral. I think music does this in general. It's kind of like this constant in your life as well. The way so many other things can change, but once music is recorded, it's there, and it's a weird thing.
Yeah, how do you think I feel? It is, I go back and actually, and it's not just me playing the LP. It's me kind of relearning the songs and re-singing those lyrics, and we do spend a long time kind of rehearsing it, and because obviously it's a different lineup now than it was 32 years ago. Sorry, 30 years ago, and so we've got to kind of reimagine it, if you like, for this new lineup. And so I'm sort of totally immersed in all that stuff for a couple of weeks, and it's a very strange feeling, I can't tell you. But like I say, it's sort of not an unpleasant one. The first time we did it, I wasn't looking forward to the process, but I actually decided that it worked out okay. And I think I did reach some kind of philosophical sort of decision, maybe, that so possibly the history of a group is as important as the present or the future, and it's all kind of one thing, really. And so I've got the issues with going back now and kind of working on those old stuff, sort of records.
And from your own personal emotions, like, how do you feel about her now?
I think I will always hate her for what she did to me, but at the same time, we have kind of met very frequently, sort of over the years. She actually lives in Australia now, so I'm looking forward to seeing her when we play in Australia in July. So, and we're good friends. Yeah. I mean, the sort of thing is, I suppose it's so long ago now that like I said before, sort of time does heal, I think, to a certain extent, and so there's bigger issues, there's bigger fish to fry. I'm not going to kind of dwell over one sort of terrible thing forever.
And what are your theories on love? I mean, do you think there is one person for each person? Like, what's your theory? What's your big theory about love and being with someone and finding that someone or being happy with someone?
I think it totally depends on the person. I think for some people, yes, that can definitely happen, and for other people, it definitely can't happen. And I think that's where I get all my source material. So I'm glad that we're not all the same, really.
It's like you feel the pain by proxy, so others don't have to.
I think often, a lot of my writing is me putting myself in a certain position, and whether that's been in real life or whether it's always kind of me imagining someone else's relationship and thinking, what would I do in that position? How would I react? How would I kind of work that out? A bit like an actor, I suppose, sort of given this role to improvise, within a play or something. So yeah, I've explored it in depth from many different angles and different points of view. And I think there's no sort of one defining theory. That's part of the beauty of it, really. How many films do you watch that are essentially a love story? And there's so many kind of varieties of themes and situations that people get into and get out of. So I think it's fascinating. Really. I remember years ago people used to say, "Oh, David, you're very good at writing these kind of relationship songs, but aren't you kind of narrowing your subject matter down to the point where it's going to be a struggle to think of new ideas?" And I did think, well, maybe that could be the case, but I've never found that really. There's been so much to write about. I almost feel like now I'm just scratching the surface because every day I see little stories and situations, or I hear a line that someone will say and I think that's a great line for a song or a song title or something. I get my little book out and write it down. So yes, it's there's stuff all around really.
And do you think technology is changing love?
Oh, totally. I guess technology's changed everything, really, hasn't it? Certainly, the fact that I'm talking to you over a laptop from how many thousands of miles away. It's and this is a relationship of sorts. So yeah, it's a totally different world now.
But I'm talking about Tinder, Plenty of Fish, Facebook. The whole way that we meet people, like even again, coming from a small town, used to influence who was available to you as a partner.
That's true. And now the whole world is your small town.
And I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, like the whole swipe left, swipe right. So I have been in a relationship since Tinder came out. So I've seen Tinder. A friend of mine showed it to me once, and what was really amazing for me was, as you flick through the photographs, is how quickly you can judge somebody.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, there's something in this.
Really? I thought you were going to say you were appalled.
No, I was like, oh man, because you'd see people there with sitting in a picture with a table full of drinks in front of them, or with a kid beside them, or with a partner beside them. And you're like, what were you thinking? Or smoking. And you're like, have you looked at this picture that you're putting out into the world to try and get someone to go to bed with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've never done it, so I don't really understand it. But it seems, the mathematician in me does kind of feel it's probably like a more efficient way of doing it, isn't it? I suppose you weed through all the people that not going to work out. Like you say, very quickly. Seems a bit heartless, but there you go. It's if you feel like the emperor, putting your thumb up, don't you? No, sorry, next.
But the mathematician, back to increasing the odds, you've got a dimly lit youth club in Ballinasloe seen through the haze of beer, or you've got the world seen through the haze of common interests.
Yes, I can see what you're saying. But
so you have not succumbed to the digital options then, I'm taking it. And I don't mean your hand. I mean, in terms of finding that love using technology.
Well, I've never needed to.
For a song.
Really. No. Well, I do kind of try and, sort of keep up with technology in terms of the writing, certainly. And I do try and adapt the way I write to incorporate the way people have started to use technology and stuff, but I've never used it myself. No, I've never had a need, I'm afraid. Oh,
or you're not afraid. You're happy. I'm happy to say that has not intersected with my requirements.
But if I did have a need, I think yes, I see what you're saying. The idea of probably like going out to a bar or something to try and meet women now would really terrify me and appall me. So I'll probably jump on it as quickly as I could, really.
Like one of the things that I can't figure out about the teenage and 20-something years in retrospect is, it was hard enough as it was with all the stuff you have to come to terms with. And then you just obliterate yourself to make it harder. I just can't understand why we did so much to just make everything harder by being ossified.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. I didn't really hear that.
Sorry. I just, looking back at the teenage and 20-something years,
Yeah.
I can't understand how we made it so much harder by being ossified all the time.
Well, I think that's probably the nature of being, of that age, though, isn't it? Really.
You need the crutch, or
Yeah. It's like I think sort of teenagers are born to be kind of miserable, really, aren't they? It's part of the job in a way. It's what you get paid for. It's being a bit moody and as I say, as I said before, these problems that you felt were earth shattering when you're 19 don't seem sort of quite so bad in retrospect, really. So it's probably all part of the thing.
but you were the soundtrack to that misery.
Yeah. Is that good or bad? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know either. But I expected you to be a lot more dour because that's how you came across at the time. You didn't sound as chirpy as you sound now.
Right. I mean, you can't kind of confuse the writer with the writings. I think, obviously, for that record, I was focusing on a particularly upsetting time. So it's I mean, I would argue there is humour in there, but yeah, it's certainly not a chirpy record, even though I was probably chirpy at the time.
But better out than in.
Well, that's what they say, isn't it? I mean, I've never found that. People always say, "Oh, is your writing a catalyst for your for you to kind of expunge your kind of miserableness or whatever?" But I've never really seen that.
Okay, this is really going micro now, Dave. So I'll ask you to bear with me here. There was one particular NME article which had photographs of you in a rowing boat. Do you remember that, on some kind of boating pond?
Yeah, I was in London on Lake Serpentine or something.
For some reason, it's really struck me. But there was one line in it that I'll never forget. It was a pull quote from you going, "I've always found women's magazines quite erotic."
Right.
Which I thought was so prescient. And I think I spent a lot of time reading Cosmo because of that quote.
Well, I think they are quite erotic. Yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't particularly do it so much nowadays, but I think they're always great photographs and stuff.
Just so when you were talking about making your career choice and leaving college and going, "This is what I'm going to do now," and you talk about being successful, what was your idea of success? Like, what had you visualized at that stage? What did success seem like to you?
The only thing that I was kind of was aiming for at that point was to have my single played on the radio by John Peel, to be honest, and I think I would have probably happily retired after that, because I think that was, I grew up listening to that programme from, I suppose, since punk really onwards and all the way through university, to the point where I was kind of obsessed with it, and until his death really I was, I'd hardly ever missed a show, and so yes, that was I mean, I had some friends from where I grew up in Manchester who started a band called Chameleons. I don't know if you know them. From Middleton in Manchester, and they went down to Broadcasting House and gave Peel a tape, and as a result, so did a Peel session, and that to me was like, that was success. I thought, wow, if they can do it, I can certainly have a go. So, yeah, that was my main target, because I remember meeting somebody at the time just after the single came out, and Peel had played it, because he played it quite a few times, and I met this person and she said, "Well, great, you'd be looking at Top of the Pops and touring America and Japan and all the rest of it." And I was like, "Yeah, I suppose I guess, but my sort of main target has been achieved, really." John Peel has played my record on the radio, and I've been waiting for that for about 15 years or something. So Obviously,
It's
the
very
influence
hard.
came later.
It's very hard to talk about John Peel without feeling sad, though, isn't it?
Oh yes, totally. And I think even now I still. It's funny because because I lived in Seattle for about a year and a half in 2002, I think it was 2003, and so I didn't really hear the programs because I used to get people to tape them, but it was a bit hit and miss really. I got like the occasional one sent over on a cassette because it was hard to listen on the internet in those days. And then for Christmas a couple of years ago, my girlfriend gave me an iPod, which is basically full of all the John Peel programs that I've missed over that period.
Oh my
So
God!
best Christmas present I've ever had, to be honest. But it's very bittersweet hearing it because so we've been driving across America quite a lot recently, and we've been using that as the soundtrack. And it's fantastic to hear those programs and to hear his voice, and it reminded me how much I love it. But at the same time, yeah, there is that kind of sadness that he's no longer there, really. So it's an interesting experience.
John Peel kind of was the internet, really.
Yes, I mean it's weird, isn't it now? Because obviously, for a band, there's so many outlets on YouTube and I don't know, Spotify and all this kind of stuff. There's ways of getting music out there, but certainly for a band like The Wedding Present from alternative rock background, he was the main target, and in a way, he was a great bloke and everything, but he had too much power. I think, I think he because I know people in bands who sort of didn't really have any success because Peel didn't play their records. And they sounded like Peel records to me, as kind of stuff he was playing. And they would say to me, David, how come he doesn't play our record? And I'd say, I've no idea. Have you done something to upset him? Or, I really can't answer the question. But because, if he played your record, certainly, we noticed that straight away. After he started playing the first single, people were coming to us and saying, oh, come and play in our club in Carlisle. Oh, come and be interviewed for our fanzine. All the rest of it, and then we got NME features, and it all kind of snowballed. And it was certainly noticeable that all started, when you played the record.
But of course, John Peel famously had to stop playing you when you signed to RCA, as far as he was concerned.
Well, he didn't stop playing us. I think it was more.
Oh, I thought he did. I thought he just. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Okay.
No, I think. Because I remember when we first signed to RCA and we had meetings with the kind of record promotions, kind of pluggers people, and obviously they didn't know who we were really, so I had to give them an overview of the history of the group. And I said, our biggest champion on radio is John Peel, and I could see their faces kind of drop because they, to them, John Peel was unpluggable basically. If some promotions team went to him with a bunch of records, they're more likely to be at the bottom of the pile than the ones that he just got through the post from a bunch of lads up in Scotland or whatever. So I used to send him my records all the time, and he used to play them. I used to bypass the promotions system.
And I'm intrigued that what gave you the belief to set up your own record label right from the start? Well, what made you feel that you're a complete outsider and you're like, oh yeah, we're just going to do our own label and get onto John Peel and there we go?
I didn't have much choice, to be honest with you, because we did a lot of demos before the single came out, and we took them, we sent them off to all our favourite record labels, and they all sent us little slips saying sounds great, but not for us, kind of thing. So there was no. If we wanted to, release a record, it was basically we had to save up and do it ourselves, really. So it wasn't like this big decision, that we needed and had to have our own label. It was just a necessity. Having said that, once we started it, we actually quite enjoyed it. We quite enjoyed having our own label, and that's why we did George Best on that, even though we had been approached by other labels by then, but we decided to keep our own record label for the time being. So yeah, it's it became.
What did you enjoy about it? What bits did you enjoy?
I think it was that kind of feeling of building something, really. We hadn't been on any other labels, so we had nothing to compare to. But we did like the idea of, I suppose, having the complete control as well, and sort of not having to sort of compromise anything, and any decision sort of made by the band or the label was actually made by the band members themselves in a little meeting. So it was exciting, really. I think we created something, and we signed a couple of other bands to it as well. So it was fun doing that. It just seemed to, once we established that we had our own label, we got really into it, and it snowballed and became something of a little passion, really, until we signed to RCA.
I have to ask you about that photograph of George Best from the cover of George Best.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that photograph come from? Why that photograph? Did it mean anything particular to you? Why George Best at all? I don't even know the backstory as to the George Best and you.
Well, I grew up in Manchester, and I was always a Manchester United fan, still am, of course. And George Best was kind of the star of the team when I was a kid. He was, a sort of great player, he was a brilliant player, but also he had that flamboyant, the kind of long hair and the shirt outside of the shorts, and he was always getting into trouble because he was out dating Miss World, the night before an important game or something. So, to a kid, it was brilliant. It was like this rebel who no one could tell off because he was so great, really. And so he became something of an icon, I think, for me. And then, so I had this idea that we could call the LP George Best. And then Keith, the bass player, and I just went to a sports photographic agency to look for photographs that we could use. And that one came up, and we both looked at it and went, that's it. That's exactly what George Best means to us, really. That kind of slightly arrogant, look and so cool, really. And we just thought, yes, there's your front cover sitting right there in front of you. So it just all came together. I just thought it was a great name, for a record, really, and a little tribute to him as well. I remember somebody from the NME actually saying that I was just being cheeky, that I wanted to associate the name of The Wedding Present with George Best forever. And I kind of felt, well, I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose you're right, actually. I'm guilty of that. Yeah, totally. I didn't, wish to sort of make any financial gain on it, by that association at all. But it was just more of a case of, as I say, a little tribute to it, really. Although I remember that at the time when it came out, a few people did think it was a new LP by George Best called The Wedding Present, because he's obviously hanging out with the Beatles. He's probably capable of being a pop star himself as well. So it didn't, it did backfire in certain instances.
So what did he think of it? Did you ever find out what he thought of it?
Yes, because when we decided on the title and the cover and stuff, our press officer at the time actually suggested that we meet him for a photograph session. So we met him just the once, and he had no clue who we were, really. But it was obviously fantastic to meet him, and we had a few photographs taken with him, and we talked about fishing, I think. But it was, I was gobsmacked. I was in the room, waiting for George Best to come, and then he walks through the door. For me, that was quite a moment, really.
Yeah, it's mad. I've a slight confession to make. It's not a confession, really. There's nothing bad about it. I've only gotten into soccer in the last 3 years. I suppose my confession is that I'm an Arsenal fan. But my son, my son got me into soccer because when he got into soccer, and I was never into the sport as a kid, never, ever, ever. And I thought soccer was stupid, and all sport was stupid. And now I love soccer, and I love watching the games, and it's really. So I think a lot about it, and I think about why soccer, and why are kids so into it, and why do they like it, and why do they love it, and it's kind of weird. It's almost like the music business with its act together in some respect. It's kind of mad. Like, even as a parent, how much money soccer extracts from you without you even noticing.
Really? I suppose it was all the kits and things.
Yeah, and it never ends, but it's kind of subtle, you know. It's not like buy this, it's out. It's just like they make all this stuff that you want or that your
Mm.
kid wants. They don't have to force you to want it, but what is it about soccer? Like why do you think it's so powerful? What is it about it that you love?
Uh, I just think it's the ultimate game, really. I think it's simple, apart from the offside rule. It's pretty easy to understand, uh, and I can see why that rule's in place, obviously, but it does confuse people initially. But it's just basically getting this object into that person's net, isn't it? You know, by using your feet, and I think so. It's a very it's a game you can watch even if you're not particularly interested and so don't want to know the rules. It's kind of obvious what's happening really. Whereas you watch American football and it's it's like a different planet really. Even the people when they play it, they kind of stop and kind of discuss the rules for half an hour because they're not quite sure, if that was an infringement. So it's got that kind of worldwide appeal, really, hasn't it? I think you say it costs a lot of money to play and to participate, but at the same time, it is a game you can. It's a play in the street, with a tennis ball, can't you? If need be.
Oh yeah, I
So
don't begrudge it that money. I mean, and I love going to soccer games. Like, the roar of a crowd that you're used to from concerts.
yeah,
You get even more of it sometimes. Like a soccer game for me is almost like more constant than a gig. It's like a gig without the peaks and troughs. There's this
interesting. Yeah,
constant,
I can see what you're
yeah,
saying. Yeah, and that atmosphere as well, isn't there, and stuff.
yeah. I know. Obviously, I've got the zealousness of a recent convert. All my friends are like going, "Oh, we got out of soccer years ago. We like rugby now. Like soccer's really
Yeah,
soccer's really boring and retarded. Like, what's wrong with you?"
you're like one of those born again Christians, but with
Yeah. But the great thing now with Arsenal going through all they're going through, like I'm saying to my son, this is what it's about. You gotta stay with it through thick and thin. And he'd be saying all these really bad things about Wenger, and I'd be talking him back from the brink.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to learn from it.
Well, yeah, and,
So
and, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on as well. I think that's what appealed to me about George Best, really. That it wasn't just about the game; it was about all the surrounding stuff as well, really.
yeah, yeah, and another guy taken too soon. Um, so even though the show is called Born Optimistic, one of the things I really want to try and do with the show is trying to help people who aren't in good form, you know, who aren't feeling their best. And sometimes when you're in a bad mood and a good mood's going to come, and some people are good at remembering how to put themselves into a good mood when they're in a bad mood, and some people aren't good at it. And I was wondering, are there any kind of tricks or techniques or things that you've learned that when you're not feeling at your best and when you're feeling blue, how to try and get you back to not feeling that way?
Well, I think mine is one of the common kind of more obvious ones, really, which is that there's always a lot more people worse off than you, really, and I think that kind of brings me down to as soon as I start feeling sorry for myself because something's not going quite right, I just think, well, yeah, but you're not, escaping from a war zone by trying to cross the Mediterranean Ocean in a raft, are you really? So it's yeah, kind of grow up a bit, really. I mean, it's probably not what people want to hear. It's not the most sensitive of, uh, of ways of getting over that kind of situation, but I guess that's what I usually do.
But it's almost that you have to wallow sometimes as part of your profession. So how do you make sure that you don't wallow too much? Like if you're mining emotions to feel a certain way to write a song about a topic, like
Yeah,
you're
I can totally switch it on and off. To be honest with you, I don't know. It's just the way it's always been. I feel like I've got this way of sort of going into a room. I can spend hours on a lyric or a song or something, and be totally focused and immerse myself in that particular subject. And then when it's time for dinner, I'll come out, and I won't even think about it. I'll forget about it until the next time I have to go back to it. So I don't know whether that's a particular skill that I've developed or whether I've always had it, but yeah, I'm totally able to divorce myself from the me the writer, if you like, and me in normal life.
That's amazing. That's brilliant.
Is it? I thought, I don't know. Yeah, it's just I've always, yeah, it's never really sort of transgressed each other's territories, really.
That's pretty cool. But then do you use the same techniques then for, let's say, when you're faced with awful stuff on the news, like refugees in a boat, like how do you cope with knowing what's going on in the world around you? Not even as a songwriter, like as a human.
I think
Not
you
that
just,
songwriters aren't human.
yeah. I don't know. I think I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit Aspergery or something. I'm able to compartmentalize. I think to a certain extent, but then I suppose most people do because they have to. Because you see all these atrocious things all the time, don't you? And we're bombarded with it, really.
Yeah, yeah. How do you keep going?
Mm.
So I have to say now, you may not like the first half of this sentence, but it does get better. So so I kind of had a rule that I didn't go to retro gigs because there was a time in my life when every single gig I went to felt about the past, and it started to get me down a bit because I was like, is my life over? Has all the exciting stuff happened when all I'm doing is trying to relive my youth and all that stuff?
Mm.
But like when I pressed play on George Best, I was just like, oh my God, I know I want to see this again. I know for some reason I don't have that in the same bucket that I have the Happy Mondays in right now, as in I don't want to go to their show. And I don't know what it is, and I can't explain it. Maybe there's a purity or something that you've maintained, or I don't know what it is. Maybe you've managed to not piss all over the legacy. And I don't really know what I expect you to say in response, other
Mm.
than I just feel it feels natural to me. Like it feels like some kind of time tunnel, like some kind of vortex or black hole. I press play and boom, there I am, 14, and it feels right. It feels natural. I don't know. I don't know what I expect you to say either.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying because I think it's the same kind of feeling. I mean, you've kind of reiterated what I said a while ago about when we were first approached to do it, and I definitely had that feeling of no, I don't want to go down the nostalgia route because I've got it just felt a bit weird to me. And then as soon as I did approach George Best, uh, and maybe it is for some of the reasons that you said, I don't know. It didn't feel awkward, It didn't feel like we were some kind of reformed '80s band who were just sort of flogging another dead horse kind of thing. When we performed it last time and when we performed it subsequently, it has felt still vibrant and meaningful, and it's an exciting record to play as well. If I'm honest with you, it's. I don't think it's the best wedding present LP. I mean, to be honest, I think it's my least.
What's your favorite one? Bizarro, Sea Monsters? Like, what's your?
Uh, well, they're all different in a way. I
Mm.
think that. So I do feel like I've been in like 4 or 5 different groups, sort of almost over the years, and it's hard to compare them. I just know that I feel that after George Best, we improved as as anybody in sort of perfecting a craft would do really. So we got better gear, we got better positions, I got better, I sang better. We had more money to make records and stuff. So I think there was so many things that were improved after George Best. So I think of them all, it's the one that I see more flaws in. But then obviously some people do like those flaws as well. I've had this conversation
Yeah.
before. With people.
You've made me think about it now. I'm running even up to the more recent Wedding Present albums through my head, and they all are different. There are very different things. But the great thing about getting to interview you, apart from you being so kind with your time, is that I've spent the week listening to Wedding Present albums, not just George Best. And I haven't done that in a while. And there's no reason why I didn't do it. I just didn't do it. And now I have. And it's like all these great memories flooding back. And memories in a visceral way. Like I just felt things rather than went, oh, I remember the time. I just felt all these things. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Nope.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the memories. And thank you for the music.
All right. No worries. Nice to speak to you.
That was David Gedge. I was really surprised at how non-morose he is. I expected him to be a lot moodier. He's kind of chirpy, isn't he? Cool guy, interesting guy. And don't forget, Saturday, June 17th, they're back in Dublin playing that George Best album in full at the Academy. And I'd like to dedicate this show and the interview with David Gedge to the dearly departed Raymond Hardiman. Got to go quickly this week, so until next week, thank you so much for listening to Born Optimistic. This has been a Snow Furnace production. Bye.